If it was acknowledged as time went on with that, is due to the shortage of GPs, etc., that we couldn't keep doing that. So that bit was never going to be a sustainable option, and this is why different things have been looked at all the time. I am not expressing a view one way or another. I just think there is some historical context that needs to be taken into consideration by anybody that hasn't been around everything that way. Still hate to be still stand by statements that I've given that way, but I think it would be wrong. I mean, need to pass on experience or years at this sport.
Okay, thank you, Mike. It's always helpful to have historical context, I feel. No, that is a point. Yeah, I'm not underestimating the complexity and the risk involved in this decision. I think for me personally, I'm in the same place as John Tomlinson here. It's about balancing up the various risks. I was pleased to see the information about how the preferred option deals with 5 of the 6 relevant strategic risks in our strategic risk register. You have to take decisions not about, what happens this week, next week, or even next month, but what the future is and what the future provision of service is, and how we can keep ensuring that we offer a sustainable primary care service across the whole city, and particularly in the more challenged communities. And I worry that if we shy away from a decision today because of a legal risk that's there in every single procurement process, it doesn't matter what we're procuring, it doesn't matter if we're procuring pens or GPs. There's always a risk that an unsuccessful and discontented bidder could challenge. I think if we shy away from a decision, we actually end up making it much, much harder for us to make strategic change across any of our services in the future, because we are showing that we're not willing to balance, to weigh up risks and take decisions to tackle them. If we don't take a decision today, we're saying that the status quo will prevail in effect. We'll end up still with 31 practices in the city, which the sustainability report say is too many. We've got more than 20 of them at red and at risk, of a partner going sick or somebody going off on long-term leave for another reason, or leaving, partners falling out. And those practices suddenly become very vulnerable and need much more support to continue, or we have the situation that we had in Rosemount, where we had to close the practice and divide up the patient list, and all the fear and uncertainty that caused for those patients. So I just don't think it's the right thing to do today not to make a decision. Frankly, I think we're just kicking a can further down the road, and I don't think it's possible for us to get an assurance from officers that there is no legal risk to a tender process. I think that is a fact of life, tender processes. Then it's for us to decide whether the decision that we're being asked to take today, to go to a procurement process, but at the same time work on service design within the 2C practices, it gives us a good chance of addressing the risks that we face and of implementing our primary care improvement plan to show strategic improvement for primary care across the city. And my view is the decision that we're being asked today does tick those boxes. And I'm very keen not to delay a decision, because I think that'll just add to uncertainty for staff and for patients. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. So I think I would prefer if we could make a decision on consensus. So I'm going to put you back on the spot, John Kirk, and see if you are still not happy to make this decision today. In which case I'll be asking for you to find a supporter from one of the 8 voting members on the board and propose an alternative, and we'll put it to a vote. But I would prefer not to do that.
I would prefer to go with consensus, and I've got a lot of sympathy with what you said. I would prefer us to be working on service redesign within the 2C practices, maybe merging those 2C practices that are happy to merge, trying to broker some agreed mergers between other practices that are happy to do so. But I just can't quite bring myself to support the recommendations as they are. I suspect I may not find a seconder, but okay. I'm really sorry, because
yeah, no, I am too, and I appreciate the complexities and the difficulties. I absolutely do. I do.
I think what this paper is trying to do is well intentioned. I don't dispute that. I totally get that we need to make primary care more sustainable. I just can't quite. I've just got reservations, nagging doubts.
Okay, John Tomlinson. I am keen for us to draw this to a conclusion. We've been going at this for an hour and a half now, but John Tomlinson.
Yeah, just trying to, obviously listening very closely to Councillor Cook, and I think the kind of comments that are being made are really important. And I suppose one of the reflections I have is that as officers are coming forward with recommendations, we have been quite robust as we are today in scrutinising those, and I can think of the care at home procurement and other aspects. And I think one of the things I'm assured on over the piece of that is that the points that are brought up are being taken into account, and actually where we will go as a board will in future in responding to service redesign, etc., because this won't be the last of these big issues that we have, will be impacted on in the way these are taken forward in the future by the officer group. So I think trying to place it in that context, I would be assured that they are listening very closely to all of the points that are being raised here, and will need to be accountable for what actually happens and comes back to us. So whether that helps or not, I think it just puts it into that even broader context of the role that we have. And I think it's very mature that we're actually having the conversation that we are today, and able to get into the challenge in detail. But anyway, we'll let you get on with where we go next.
Okay, thank you, John. Alex, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think Councillor Cook's raised some issues in relation to the procurement process earlier on, and I'm just, you know, I think we've got an item on the agenda later on where we can actually talk around about some of these issues. So if the issue is still around about the procurement process, then I think we could, when we move into that private session, we can see what we can do to provide assurance around about that. If it's in relation to the model as it stands, then that's obviously a discussion that can continue to take place. But just thought I would highlight that to Councillor Cook and yourself.
Okay. Right. I'm not seeing any other hands. I would like us to make the decision. I respect Councillor Cook's position, and I understand where he's coming from, but I think that we need to move on and make the decision. So, John Cook, do you have an alternative proposal to make, and do you have a seconder for that?
The alternative proposal would be to consult widely with all the GP practices and see if we can get some kind of agreed mergers. It would also be to help those 2C practices that are up for a merger to merge and keep them as 2C.
Okay. Does any one of the 8 voting members on the board wish to second John's proposal? No. Okay. John, we'll note in the minutes that you made an alternative proposal. Okay, we'll try and I'll I'll do the courtesy of sharing the wording from the minutes so you're comfortable with it. Okay. I wouldn't normally do that, but I think it's important since you're kind of dissenting from the main decision that that's fairly recorded in our minutes. But I'm going to take it that we are agreeing the recommendations with the dissent of Councillor Cook noted in the minutes. That's acceptable to you, John Cook?
That'd be absolutely fine. And in terms of yeah, basically I'm kind of struggling with this because I know that the paper is kind of going in the right direction, and a lot of what you've kind of almost got me hooked in and agreeing. And it's not that it's not one of those dissent, I totally disagree with this. It's
No,
kind of
it's more nuanced.
maybe we should just look at an alternative. That's also. I am sorry that I've dissented because I really don't like to do that on IJB. But as I say, I've just got these nagging doubts.
I think it's also very tough coming in as a new member with this decision in front of you. And I have a lot of agreement with the remarks that Luann made about the process that we've gone through to get here to this decision today, which you haven't been a party to, and I'm sorry about that. So we are agreeing the recommendations on page 118 of the pack that I read out earlier, and we'll record Councillor Cook's dissent or another word that we can develop to express that. Okay, Derek.
Thank you for that, Chair. It is unusual to go down this road in the IGB world, but just for completeness and so that we accurately record it, can I have each member, each of the voting members, actually confirm that they are supporting your recommendation? Just given that we had the recess as well, make sure that everybody is here as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Councillor Duncan?
Yes, I agree with all 4 recommendations.
Luann Grugan?
Yes, I agree with the recommendations.
Councillor Cook?
No, with regret.
As recorded. Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Bell?
I'm going to agree with recommendations A, C and D, please.
Okay. Councillor Dunbar?
I agree with all recommendations.
Thank you. Kim Cruttenden?
I also agree with all recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Gray?
I agree with all the recommendations too, Derek. Thank you.
Thank you. John Tomlinson?
Yes, agreement with all 4.
Thank you for that. Chair, you've heard what the resolutions and agreement were there. Councillor Bell, can I just confirm then that you're not agreeing with recommendation B?
For the moment, yes, I'd like that. So, but when we go into the 15, I quite like, I possibly I would change my mind then. I'm not entirely convinced.
Okay.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for that. And thank you again to all the officers for the work that's been done on this. It's very complex, controversial. I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of some very difficult behaviours and in some difficult situations. I hope that we can all move forward on this now, and we can implement the change that's needed, but bring the staff along with us. And I look forward to hearing the reports back in the spring about how you're getting on. Okay, we'll move on. And sorry. There's a disadvantage to reading a paper and a PDF without the handy bookmarks that you get on the other system.
Takes us to item 13 on the agenda, Chair, which is the Alcohol Drug Partnership update.
It's the Alcohol Drug Partnership. Thank you, Derek. I'm sorry, I'm still scrolling through. So I think we have Simon Rayner here to introduce that item. Thank you.
Hello. So this item should hopefully be relatively straightforward. The ADP is a multi-agency partnership that involves community members, services and people with lived experience. Just in terms of the paper that's been submitted, there's a typo at 2.1. There is no recommendation C. What we've done is work together with partners to identify emergent risks and pressure points within the system and taking account of Operation Home First and Operation Snowdrop. We've worked with Scottish Prison Service and looking at liberations and through care for people being in the justice system. We've worked with Child and Family Social Work and looked at young people and families. We've worked with housing and Bunnercord Care, and we've engaged with the Managed Care Network for Sexual Health and Bloodborne Viruses. We've also been engaged with emergency and urgent care departments and primary care in relation to link working, and linked with partners in public protection, so adult support and protection, child protection and violence against women. What we have done is look at how we use some underspend that we have and reprioritised some projects that we can't take forward safely or sensibly within the COVID situation. So what we are proposing to do today is take forward a package of investment that has already been discussed in the Risk Audit and Performance Committee on the 3rd of November. And today we're seeking agreement to take forward 4 investments that require IGB approval and direction due to the financial thresholds. So that's the Prison Through Care, Young People Resilience Hubs, Housing and Telehealth Technology, and Bloodborne Virus fast track testing. So these projects will form part of our improvement work within community planning and our stretch aim in relation to reducing drug and alcohol related harm, and we'll use that process to demonstrate the outcomes. Projects will enhance and add capacity to existing services and developments, and the exit strategy for the proposals will be taken forward in relation to the effectiveness and ongoing service redesign of drug and alcohol delivery and strategy. So happy to clarify if there are any questions in relation to the specific projects.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Any questions on this? No. I don't know whether it's your advantage or disadvantage that you come in after the 2C discussion. Luann, you've got your hand up.
Well, just a comment really was just to say that I really support the investment in Young People's Hub. I think it aligns very well with our strategy around prevention and early intervention. And my question is really, is that all the money spent, or where are we financially with the opportunities we had, Simon?
So it's not all the funding committed. There's still a little bit of accrued underspend, and that will help sort of take some of the projects forward if there's a requirement for further investment. It still leaves some funding available to the locality engagement groups and the community planning areas to identify issues that they want to take forward in local communities. So there is still that sort of option and flexibility within the budget. But it is largely the majority of it invested.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, John Tomlinson.
Yes, Chair. I think it's just to emphasise the point that Simon had made, that this was given quite full scrutiny and at the committee, and therefore it's not that it hasn't received clear assurance, and the committee would want to give that on. I think technically it's coming here because the projects at 3-4 actually need to come through the IJB to give a direction. But the committee, as Simon's indicated, were approving all of these after due scrutiny.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I think I don't see any other hands up, so I think we'll go to the recommendations, which are on page 173. So we're being asked to approve the expenditure in paragraph 3.4, and we're being asked to make the directions set out in Appendix 2 and Appendix 3, and ask the Chief Officer to issue them to Aberdeen City Council and NHS Grampian. Are we content to do that? Yes, we are.
Yep, agreed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Simon. Another long meeting for you to sit through. Right, next item is Grampian-wide Mental Health and Learning Disability Services Update Report. This is the hosted service that we took over in March this year, just as the pandemic was happening. So I think, do we have Kay down here?
Yeah, I'm here, Chair. Thank you. So the reason why the report has come back today is to update you on the successful transition to hosted services, which was the last report that came to you in April, the approval of the Grampian-wide framework during the COVID period, and the development of the transformation programme, and then also to give you a bit more detail and update about our response in mental health during the COVID period. So just to clarify, the community services are what Kevin has updated on, and these are the hosted services. So the kind of overarching titles for that are the inpatient services, specialist services, some of the regional provision that we do for other boards, and CAMS. So the key points highlighted in the report is that we successfully transitioned from NHS Grampian to the City IGB on the 1st of April, and that was with no detriment to the existing terms and conditions of our staff. The Transformation Board had been established in December last year and had a couple of meetings before we went into the emergency measures for COVID. From April, the City and Moray IGBs managed to approve the Grampian-wide draft framework. Shire was scheduled for later on that month when all the 3 IGBs went into emergency measures, but they have now approved that framework as of November. The Grampian-wide strategic huddle was set up to manage our response to COVID, and there were key priorities identified in mental health for the systems-wide leadership team that we were asked to embed in order to sustain the protracted response to COVID through the winter. I've given some detail in the report of the specific projects, but in highlight they are embedding Near Me, moving the isolated LD wards from the Elmwood site onto the main Royal Cornhill, and sorry, that's learning disability wards. The rapid establishment of the Psychological Resilience Hub and the Unscheduled Care Hub, which we have recently aligned to the Flow Navigation Centre process that was directed nationally. The redesign of the older adult pathway due to the number of dependencies like the learning disability wards and some moves on site that were dependent on older adults. So we've made some progress there, and increasing access to commissioned pathways, which are mostly around securing that community bed base through the surge beds for winter, to make sure that people that have been delayed are moved on the delayed transfer of care or delayed discharge into community, and we've made significant progress on that over the last 2 months. So how we proceed to go forward from here is that we've re-established the Transformation Board. We've got proposed work streams that have been sitting there, and we've consulted on those. We're just waiting for final decisions. Work's underway with the Lived Experience and Carers networks to identify how we engage through the winter period and into the wider transformation with carers and those with lived experience, and the changes we're making, both the Operation Home First implementation and transformation. We've reviewed the quality, safety and assurance structures to pay attention to the delegated governance for services through IGBs, as well as our need to provide assurance through the overarching Grampian-wide system. And we've developed the draft quality improvement framework. We are working with the LIST team in Public Health Scotland because of the demands on our own health intelligence and public health teams with COVID. They've agreed to help us test a benchmarking report, and they're going to work with us to develop the sustainability measures that we talked about in the transformation programme. And then we aim to bring all of that development back to the boards and the IJBs in April. So just bringing you back to the recommendations on page 217, you'll also note that because this is a new hosted area, that we're also proposing, as well as bringing back the transformation plan and the QA framework, that we also do a workshop session with the IJB to help you understand the detail around the hosted and delegated services. And I'll just pass back for any questions and clarification required.
Okay, thank you, Kay. Right, any comments, questions for Kay? John Tomlinson.
Yes, I'd very much welcome the report. It's very helpful and thorough. So I'm assured by the progress that's being made on this. Just one thing that jumped out at me, and I know it's a recurring theme, is around technology and near me. And there are obviously a lot of positives that are sitting there. The report talks about the equipment for the service provider. I'm conscious of, at the other end, some communities and some groups or some older people who may be not computer literate, if that's the right term. But then linking that to our localities report earlier, that people, I think it was Luann said earlier, citizens or patients, have multiple contacts. So it's really a multidisciplinary issue. And that might be an interesting one that's picked up there. Otherwise, everybody's going to try and resolve it themselves. But the member of the public is then hit by a dozen. So it's just flagging that up, that I'm not sure what is being done for the service provider end, the service receiver, the recipient. But is there a way that can be a joined up effort across that new localities set up for Aberdeen? I think there's a question in there.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if it was okay just to answer you, John. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, there's been a real collective approach that we learned through the Psychological Resilience Hub, because when we set that up at PACE, one of the things we were very aware of was people that maybe would struggle in that moment of distress to utilise those methods. So we worked very much with the Grampian-wide Assistance Hub so that they could just call the hub and that they would help them do some of the assessment forms. And we are developing guidance, which is the timeline for that's for the end of November, to give guidance around how we appropriately use Near Me across the teams. And that's within a framework across Grampian that everyone's using. And we do anticipate that as we move forward with carers and service users, we will get more feedback on what they're struggling with. And absolutely, we should take that through the wider approach, because we are implementing Near Me in a Grampian-wide framework, and it's being driven by that centralised team. So absolutely, we'll feed that back at the centre.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Luann.
Thanks. Just a couple of comments, really, not questions. Just to first of all say I'm really pleased to welcome all mental health services coming over to be hosted by Aberdeen IJB. It really makes sense to have that whole pathway approach, and I'm sure all IJB members will look forward to working with mental health services on this. It's an area that's just of huge significance for our population, but also hugely complex and challenging. So I really welcome the seminar in the new year to help us sort of reset where we're at and give the IJB the opportunity to get, to help shape what the new framework looks like. So just really pleased to get that update and look forward to seeing how that progresses. Thanks.
Okay, I don't think there's a question there. Don't see any other hands, so I think we'll move to the recommendations. We're on page 217. We're being asked to note the progress made in developing the Grampian-wide transformation programme and instructing the Chief Officer to bring a final version to the IJB following consultation with key stakeholders in April 2021. And we're noting the progress made on developing the benchmark report for Grampian-wide mental health and learning disability services. And we agree a timeline of 1st of April 2021 to fully embed this as a performance scorecard in our Tableau dashboard. And we're noting, as Luann's just mentioned, that there's going to be an IJB workshop in early 2021. on the Grampian-wide mental health and learning disability service, so that we can properly understand the pathway approach that's being taken here. So is everybody's content to approve those recommendations, I take it? Yes, great. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we're now on item 14.1, which is a transformation decision. It's coming back to us. It's a decision that we asked further work to be done on HMP and Young Offenders Grampian mental health project. So we had a discussion about this at the last meeting, but I'm happy for Kevin to give us a brief summary of the proposal again, and then open it up to questions. Kevin?
With the chair's permission, I was going to be very brief. It's slightly reworked to try and address the questions and clarifications that were sought at the last board meeting. So I think what my Shire colleagues have done, they've enhanced the option appraisal section, and they've given a more comprehensive narrative of how the choice was come about. My Shire colleagues are actually in the call, so they can answer questions direct. I'm afraid it was John Donaghy and Louise's officer, but neither are available today, so you get me instead, so that we don't have continuity. Apologies for that.
It's all right.
But my Shire colleagues would be happy to take questions. They're on the call.
Okay, I think I'll just, given that it was for clarification last time, I'd just particularly draw board members' attention to paragraph 316 on page 234, which gives the rationale for why option 3 is not the recommended option at this time. So, questions and comments? Miss John Tomlinson.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. That clarification is extremely helpful. I just wanted to double check one thing, and it talks about a permanent post on page 252 and then page 234 temporary post. I think that's the right ones. So was that a second post that would be temporary, taking up additional monies if they can be sourced? That's how I'm kind of joining that up, but I just wanted to clarify that, please.
I think Dawn will be able to answer that, if that's okay, Dawn.
Yes, hello there. Yes, the posts referred to in the options, preferred option 2 will be permanent posts, but clearly that's being costed just in terms of projection of further funding. I mean, it's really important that they're protected posts in terms of recruitment and sustainability and real investment in the development of the services. And then where we refer to some temporary posts, I think that was the anomaly that was option 3. That was a very, very attractive option, which caused great confusion. I apologize within the matrix, but regarding like what that other option would look like in terms of extent of service, within the slippage, there is opportunity for temporary posts to progress what we would aspire to do in option 3 on a very short-term basis, to give some evaluations, give some outcomes, so we can therefore invest in future, hopefully attract future funding and invest in that option to make it a wider and more attractive service provision.
That's fine. I just wanted to be assured on that point. I didn't want to end up that we'd forced into a temporary appointment where we really need a permanent one. So thank you for that.
I think the delays enabled people to go away and look and see if there is some budget available to do the kind of temporary version of option 3. So I think that's an improvement on the original recommendation. So we did the right thing asking for clarification on this. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? No. Okay, we're on page 231 then for the recommendations. So we're being asked to approve preferred option 2 as set out in Appendix 1. And we're instructing the Chief Officer to work with, our Chief Officer to work with the Chief Officer of Aberdeenshire Health and Social Care Partnership to implement the project set out in the report. And we're instructing our Chief Officer to make the direction as per Appendix 2 and issue to NHS Grampian. So I'm taking it that everybody agrees with those. Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. Go off and have your lunch now. Right, we're into exempt business, so we will turn off the recording.